Hello everybody and welcome to Group 9 video with our interesting topic is about global water resource control. First, we need to know what is water resource. Well, water resources are natural resources of water that are potentially useful for humans. For example, as a source of drinking water supplies or irrigation water. 97% of the water on the earth is salt water and only 3% is fresh water. Of the 3% of fresh water that humans can use, 2% of it is frozen in the glacier and polar ice caps. The remaining unfrozen fresh water is found mainly as groundwater, with only a small fraction present above ground or in the air. There are three types of water resources, including salt water, groundwater, and surface water. Let's go through salt water. Salt water, are also known as seawater, is the water that makes up the ocean and the seas, covering more than 70% of Earth's surface. Seawater is a complex mixture of 96.5% water, 2.5% salt, and smaller amounts of other substances, including dissolved inorganic and organic material, particulates, and a few atmospheric gases. Seawater constitutes a rich source of various commercially important chemical elements. Much of the word magnesium is recovered from seawater as a large quantities of bromine. Next is surface water. Surface water is any body of water above ground, including streams, rivers, lakes, wetlands, reservoirs, and creeks. The ocean, despite being salt water, is also considered surface water. Surface water participates in hydrologic cycle or water cycle, which involves the movement of water to and from the Earth's surface. Precipitation and water runoff feed bodies of surface water. Evaporation and seepage of water into the ground, on the other hand, cause water bodies to lose water.
Next is groundwater. Groundwater is the water present beneath Earth's surface in rock and soil pore spaces and in the fractures of rock formations. About 30% of all readily available fresh water in the world is groundwater. A unit of rock or unconsolidated deposit is called an aquifer when it can yield a usable quantity of water. The depth at which soil pore spaces or fractures and void in rocks become completely saturated with water is called the water table. Groundwater is recharged from the surface. It may discharge from the surface naturally as springs and seeps and can form oases or wetlands. Groundwater is also often withdrawn for agricultural, municipal, and industrial use by constructing and operating extraction wells. The study of distribution and movement of the groundwater is hydrogeology, also called groundwater hydrology.
Now, let's take a close look between upstream and downstream. Upstream means toward the shore of the river or from where the flow originates. So, the upstream country is uphill, where the direction of the water is coming from. There are some upstream countries that are notable representatives, such as China is the upstream country of many rivers, especially the Mekong River, Yellow River, and Yangtze River. While the Nile River has two main upstreams. The first one is from Lake Victoria and the others in Lake Tana of Ethiopia. Because of the hardship of the topography and fast flow speed, upstream is always shorter than downstream and requires more strength and time. What about the downstream? The downstream is a part of the river near the river mouth, often encompassing the vicinity, distinguished between the upstream and middle river. The lower part of the river is the lower area of river basins, mostly with the perennial accretion that can create wetlands. In general, when flowing to the downstream, the river cross-section expands. The river often divides into many branches and empties into the sea. The river downstream usually has a small slope. The main stream of sediments in the river bottom is fine sand and mud. Due to the widening of the river cross-sections, the water speed is reduced so that the sedimentation is a main process, while the erosion only occurs during the flood season at certain points. In the downstream near the sea, rivers are often branches. The riverbed is deformed and meanders in a sinusoidal shape, and often has a change in morphology under the influence of continuous accretion and erosions.
The dam construction is nothing new in most river basins around the world. Dams have often been regarded as man's response to nature's vagaries to mitigate flood and drought by containing water and releasing it as per demand and supply. Clearly, dams are seen more as hydropower generators with flood mitigation, irrigation, and drinking water supply. So now, let's take a careful look at the Mekong Basin, which originates in the Himalayas to China, to understand how dam construction is important to upstream countries for their water control. The Mekong River is located in Southeast Asia, and it is considered as the seventh largest river in the world in terms of discharge, and the 10th longest river in terms of length. The Mekong Basin is full of natural resources, including fish and other aquatic diversity living in that region. The body of the river is divided into two parts. The upstream part includes its origin in Tibet Plateau belonging to China and Myanmar, and the downstream part belongs to Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Meanwhile, a dam project included infrastructure for generation of hydropower, infrastructure of housing of workers and for office, a distribution network of canals and pipe systems, and access growth. An assessment study put the hydroelectric power potential of the country at about 84,000 MW, with maximum scheme invited on Brahmaputra Basin 226, followed by Indus Basin 190 and Ganges Basin 142. Possibility of revenue generation through sale of power unit to other states, and private players remain the main ground for state governments to invite project developers. Hydropower is often viewed as a renewable economic and non-polluting source of energy, and hence there is an increased emphasis on building dams, especially in the hydrologically rich but geologically free soil in Himalayan states. The provision of hydropower triggers economic development and helps to meet the rising energy demand of Mekong riparian countries, especially China, Thailand, and Vietnam. The main purpose of dams is to store and safely hold water in large quantities, which are then released to be used for various purposes, such as irrigation, hydroelectricity, recreation. Firstly, hydroelectricity is the biggest source of renewable energy of electricity and clean, because it does not contribute to global warming, air pollution, acid rain, or depletion. Secondly, dams play an important role in supplying water for domestic and industrial purposes. Finally, the dam helps socio-economic development of people in the area.
Continuously, I am going to present 5 benefits of hydroelectric dams. Hydroelectricity appeared more than 70 years old and has become the hope of mankind in many ways. First, hydropower is a renewable source of energy. The energy generated through hydropower relies on the water cycle, which is driven by the sun, making it renewable. Second, we can see that hydropower projects have partly promoted economic development over time. Although the cost and time to build a hydroelectric project is quite long, the benefits of high efficiency and long life are undeniable. Not only hydroelectricity development, but also the infrastructure will be invested in parallel, synchronous and modern. Third, compared with fossil fuels such as coal and gas, which provide thermal power, hydroelectricity is providing a clean energy source. The next benefit is hydropower projects do not consume the amount of water that is used to generate electricity, but discharge the water for multi-purpose use such as providing water for food productions. Reservoirs can improve conditions for aquaculture and water transport. The last benefit in terms of sustainability, hydropower has great potential in conserving ecosystems, enhancing economic viability, and enhancing social equity. However, hydropower also brings a lot of negative effects. An obvious fact is the impact that Vietnam's Cửu Long River Delta has been suffering from. The Mekong Delta is crucial to the Vietnamese economy and it has been severely impacted. The most important and biggest problem now is that the upstream has been built by China and the countries confluent with the Mekong River, leading to some problems for the downstream countries. People in the downstream areas are facing many problems related to water resources and transboundary impacts including flooding, water shortage, and water pollution. In the dry season, the delta is affected by saline intrusion and tides, which cause many difficulties for humans. Because the freshwater level is too low, the water source has been infiltrated by salt water, destroying the land, affecting the crops and daily life of people here. What is more, the prolonged drought downstream of the river has destroyed tens of thousands of acres of arable land, prompting officials to warn that rice production could decline. This happens not only in Vietnam but also in neighboring countries such as Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia.
To mitigate these impacts, a large number of engineering works, mainly dikes and dams, is still under construction in the delta in recent years and is mostly for flood control and saline intrusion. In the rainy season, hydropower companies release water to relieve the pressure of colonial dams that cause severe flooding. It makes people's life even more difficult. Furthermore, the water quality downstream has also deteriorated significantly. According to statistics, 50% of the sediment of the Mekong River comes from the Tibetan Plateau. However, the amount of alluvium flowing to the lower river delta is also blocked by dams, while it plays an important role in rice and crop production. Besides, alluvium also affects the migration of fish species, reducing aquatic production in the wild. The reduced amount of alluvium and change in the flow also increase erosion and landslides on both sides of the river, causing people to lack arable land and reducing the inherent ecological diversity of the Mekong Delta. Another thing is that freshwater resources are increasingly scarce due to lack of water and saltwater intrusion, making people not have enough water for domestic use and agricultural activity in general and fisheries in particular. Upstream reservoir works have reduced water level downstream, adversely affected farming and fishing, and exacerbated the negative effects of drought. Observers have also criticized China's financing of major dam projects in Laos. as a way of making the country depending on China, and that exacerbates the negative problems that downstream countries, including Vietnam, are facing. This situation will be better when the upstream countries let the dams release water slowly. The return water will help reduce salinity in the delta. Alluvial deposits will help harvest crops, and the aquaculture industry will also improve at that time. That's why the countries downstream of the rivers must have a say in the construction of dams anywhere upstream of the river, not only for the common good of the countries but also because of the possible disadvantages for the downstream country when the dams appear.
So, what are the solutions for this problem? There are some. If downstream countries deem the water allocation unfair, either before or after the dam construction, downstream countries can choose to respond in these ways. The one way is that downstream countries uses force against upstream countries. At this time, upstream countries can respond in two ways. They can either concede to downstream countries' demands peacefully without any conflict, or they can choose to defend. In this case, without any third-party mediation, the tension could escalate into a large-scale conflict. This, however, is not an ideal solution, as war will cost more than should be lost. Therefore, negotiation becomes the more preferred solution to solve the conflict over dams built along the upstream basin. For existing dams, downstream countries and upstream countries can negotiate to decide the amount of water inflowing downstream countries' territory. This depends on satiation point of upstream countries and any shared interest between downstream countries and upstream countries. They also negotiate trading water in exchange for some kind of a transfer, for example, monetary, economic, or political issues. For future dams, before any dam construction, discussion between countries involved in the basin must be carried out to reach mutual acceptance. Some of the key points must be taken into account include: first, sustainability of the river and people's livelihood along the river. As we all know, the water from the river do not only affect the agriculture of the marine, but also causes losses in case of accident. Secondly, countries must recognize the rights as well as the benefits gained or lost by the dam being built. This is to minimize any conflict in the future and also prepare each country for possible situations that may happen once the dam is finished. Thirdly, countries must ensure compliance, including international, regional, national legislation. This is also to prevent any future conflicts. And finally, all countries must acknowledge that the dam and the river are used for peace, national and regional development and security purposes. In the Mekong Basin River area, the Mekong River Commission, MRC, including Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and Vietnam, has constantly held meetings to keep track of the plan of dams being built along the Mekong River. At the meetings, the riparian countries raise ideas and opinions, as well as share responsibility to ensure the sustainable development and management of the Mekong River basin. Regarding other regions of the world, several conflicts have been recorded between countries along the Nile River basin since the second half of the last century. From 1959 to 2003, there were 4 times when countries in the Nile River basin come together to sign on the agreement on the utilization of Nile water and cooperation for the sustainable development and mutual benefits of the region. Besides, in response to the issue related to Trans-Boundary Basin, the Water Convention was founded to provide the legal framework and cooperation mechanisms. These act to ensure the timely and sufficient availability of quality water. This organization aims at sustainable development goals that require all countries by 2030 implement the integrated water resources management at all levels including through transboundary cooperations and appropriate.
Finally is the conclusion. Water is a precious gift from nature. Both upstream and downstream countries need to share and use these sources of water reasonably. Dams, before being constructed, need to have an agreement of both upstream and downstream countries in order not to damage each other like China used to do in the past to the Mekong River. We hope you will like the video and thank you for watching our performance. Here is our group's members and the reference to the video.